I came across this quote the other day, and the quote was about basically the reasoned approach to things. But I'll just read you the quote. It's by German Romanticist poet, Novalis, which is a pseudonym for George Philip Friedrich Freyer. The quote goes, "Poetry heals the wounds inflicted by reason." So I found that really interesting, mainly because it seems that in modern times we're all floating towards reasoned approaches to everything. Technology is helping us sort of figure out the very grains of existence, but those grains don't really speak to, in a lot of cases, they don't really speak to the emotive side of the human condition. They don't speak to the individual or any sort of human longing or human the innate human suffering or the innate human desires and wants. They really don't. I mean, why do we need to know that viruses have immune systems that can be triggered or invaded by smaller viruses? Like, I mean, fascinating stuff, but it doesn't actually speak to the emotional side of being human. Now, it seems odd coming from an atheist who would kind of demote reasoned approaches to things as less than human, but it really isn't. And I'll use the most famous atheist in the world, Richard Dawkins. He constantly makes light, more so than any other of the famous atheists I know or have read. He constantly makes light of basically emotive getaways through art, music, literature, painting, photography, etc., etc., etc. So it's never a reasoned approaches to things. It's never a denial of basically the more emotive and artistic sort of desires of a human being. And even these days too, if you want to talk about artwork has gotten to the point of being this collaborative community involvement clay type thing that's shaped by collaboration and for lack of better words. So there is this networked sort of idea of creation of building things collaboratively with other people involved, etc., etc., etc. And I only mention that because it seems to pull away from the old notion of the single, emotional, depressed, solitary artist, the eccentric, the outcast artist. Now, while I admit there may be artists like that out there, I'm not sure that they would garner any more validity through being a loner, basically. I think that they would actually be seen as lesser qualified to make comments on society through their artwork. Contemporary art I feel, always moves through and is sort of the life and sort of makes lifeblood of collaboration and involvement and things like that. I mean, even the tools we have today to work with when it comes to email and the internet, or maybe even smaller networks, or there's even poetry written by resequencing DNA. There's something about it that doesn't quite harken back to that romantic idea of the artist. And maybe what I'm doing a little bit is calling back for that notion of the artist. I'm not saying it should be the standard, but what I'm saying is, harkening back to the lonely artist, the depressed soul, the isolationist, and which in itself is a romantic idea. So that's kind of what I'm asking. I'm not brave enough to say call or ask, although I am saying it, but I'm not brave enough to say that that's how it should be. I'm just saying there's something about that, right? The nomad, the lonely artist. Interestingly enough, there is a book written on the subject, somewhat of the subject, by Roy Ascott, and it dealt with love in the telematic embrace. So how does, and love being sort of a word for, we're not talking about love, or at least not the way I picture it. We're talking about love in a larger sense, in a human sense of being human. So a slew of different emotions, anger and lust, and is there love in the telematic embrace? I would say that yes, there is. But orthodoxy tends to erase the individual sort of notion of expression through networks. Networks tend to, even if there was an individual doing something, networks tend to make that individual irrelevant in terms of just being a node in the network. So essentially what you're talking about is some level of top-down dissemination, which is never really going to work. So I mean, you're talking about different mediums and different different ways of working. So I don't know that it'll ever really come back, but something to think about. But maybe it's just a reapplication of old materials. I don't know, but that's kind of what I'm calling for. Anyway, not my best video, but we'll see if I post it. That's all for now. Bye.